Hi, thank you for joining my webinar on the foster care, adoption, the legal process. My name is Christina Campbell, and I promise to make these 30 minutes fly by with informative information on the foster care adoption process. I really wanted to record this resource because I get many calls each day on questions about what do I do with the legal process now that I'm ready to adopt my foster child? So I wanted to provide this helpful resource for you. So let's just dive in. So this isn't a brief overview of what this webinar will cover. What happens after the termination of the parental rights hearing has occurred, also known as TPR, the attorney selection process, the foster care adoption legal process, and how long will it take to finalize a foster care adoption. Now, before I proceed a little further, I do want to make sure that I state that this is the legal process for a foster care adoption in Georgia. I am a Georgia adoption attorney, and so this information is for my foster care parents that are adopting a child that maybe they perhaps live in Georgia, or the child that they're adopting is in the legal custody of a Georgia County Department of Family and Children's Services. Okay, so webinar overview. As I stated, this is a brief overview of what this webinar will occur. What happens after the termination of the parental rights, TPR hearing, the attorney selection process, how to select the best adoption attorney for your family, the foster care adoption legal process, and that's going to be the majority of what our webinar will discuss, just going over the legal process. So you'll have an idea of what to expect once you get started with the adoption process. And how long will it take to finalize a foster care adoption? I get that question a lot, so I do want to provide that information to you all as well. After the termination of parental rights, also known as TPR, now what? What happens next? So it's important that you know that there is a 30-day appeal process after the parental rights have been terminated in the juvenile court. This 30-day appeal period is the time period in which a biological parent can appeal their rights being terminated. It's important to know that this 30-day appeal period starts once the final order is filed in the juvenile court. Now, sometimes a judge may grant a TPR in the adoption, and then subsequently sign and file the TPR order on different days. So it's the day that the final order is filed with the juvenile court starts the 30-day period. Now, once this appeal period is passed, you're getting closer to the adoption process. I'm not able to tell you the exact time between a TPR in the juvenile court and finalizing adoption in the superior court because each adoption has its own unique facts and no two adoptions are alike. So some are able to finalize pretty quickly and others may take, more like a year to finalize. However, there are a couple of items you want to keep on your radar that you can ask your adoption caseworker so that you can make sure that you're actively moving your foster care adoption closer to being ready to file for adoption in the superior court. So one of those things is a child life history. And this is a form that has all the child's medical and physical information on it. DFACS, which when I say DFACS, I'm talking about the Department of Family and Children's Services, usually contracts perhaps a third party to complete this information since they have such full caseloads. But it's important to know that if you have had the child in for most of the child's life, then you should be a part of helping to provide the information that goes into the child life's history information. It is common that the child life history information is completed after TPR, but just check with your caseworker on whether this has been done and the status of it. And this is one of the things that you can be doing to moving your case further along. Next, there is a putative father registry form. And I don't know if many of you have heard of the putative father registry, probably before you got involved in the foster care process, and now more so with the foster care adoption process. But you should know that the putative father registry is a statewide service, and it has a list of names of men who may be the biological father of a child. So it's important to know with the recent update in the Georgia Adoption Code, there's important modifications that have been made to the adoption process, and it requires that a petitioner obtain a certificate from the putative father registry, stating whether there is a man that is registered on this site. This certificate is requested from the Georgia Vital Records. And you want to request this document from Vital Records once TPR has occurred. So it needs to be requested, and it needs to be filed with the adoption petition. It's important to have this PFR, also known as the Putative Father Registry Certificate, before you file for adoption, because that is going to be one of the items that your adoption attorney is going to request from you. So it should be requested by DFACS either after TPR has occurred, or it can be requested after the surrender of rights has occurred from the legal mother. Now, vital records can be backed up when it comes to this document. So you want to request this document at the earliest possible date so that this information is received and is not a holdup for your adoption. The adoption attorney selection process. So another good question that I get is, when should I start looking and retaining my adoption attorney? And that answer is, you can start looking for your adoption attorney really at any time, but specifically even after TPR has happened, if you believe your caseworker is going to place the child with you for adoption. So the earlier in the process is good. Some people even find their adoption attorney before adoption status paperwork is signed. If you have an attorney early in the adoption process, then it can help move your adoption quicker along. It's important that you choose an experienced adoption attorney. Let me say that again. It's important that you select an experienced adoption attorney, one that specializes in adoptions. An adoption attorney is more specialized than a family lawyer that does child support and divorces. So make sure when you are selecting your attorney that your attorney practices in adoptions. They've practiced in the county that you are going to file in, and they've done numerous adoptions. You want them to be well versed and experienced in adoptions. Now, I could tell you of stories where I have received calls from frantic adoptive parents because they have chosen attorneys that are not specialized in adoptions. And unfortunately, some of that has resulted in failed adoptions. That is a reality. If you do not get a specialized attorney that focuses on adoptions and knows what they are doing, they could make a fatal mistake in your adoption. So adoptions just are so precious and emotional. They're serious. So you want to select the most qualified adoption attorney for your family. Another question is, when it comes to adoption, is the big question: how much will an adoption attorney cost? Well, for a foster care adoption, I can't speak for every single attorney. I'm only speaking for myself. But if your child qualifies for the adoption assistance payment, my office will accept that payment for the attorney's fees for $1,500. So you want to check with your caseworker to see, does your child qualify for the adoption assistance benefit that will pay up to $1,500 for the adoption process. But also, when you're selecting your adoption attorney, confirm with that attorney before you begin the process as to whether they will accept that adoption assistance benefit as payment. If they do not accept that amount or accept that benefit, then you want to just check with them what their attorney's fees are. And likewise, if your child does not qualify for the adoption benefit and you need to pay for the attorney's fees out of pocket, we handle that as well. And you should just give our office a call as well, and we can speak with you about that. So now let me just share a little bit of information about myself. So again, my name is Christina Campbell. I'm the principal attorney of the Campbell Law Practice. I'm a wife, a mother of 2 beautiful girls, and I'm an adoption attorney. I've been practicing law now for over 17 years, and I specialize in adoptions. That means my law office just does adoptions. So I consider myself an expert at adoptions. I am a member of the Georgia Council of Adoption Lawyers and also a provisional member of the Academy of Adoption and Assisted Reproduction Attorneys organizations. I have presented at continuing legal education seminars for attorneys, meaning I help train attorneys in adoptions, as well as I do trainings like these for foster care parents so that they have great resources with helpful information to assist them in the adoption process. I love what I do, and because of that, I travel to numerous counties throughout Georgia. So I'm able to assist as many families as I can. So about over 19 counties I will travel to do adoptions. Here's our list of the counties that I will travel to. The metro Atlanta counties, and then about counties about 60 miles or so from the Atlanta area. So that's Barrow, Bartow, Carroll, Cherokee, Clayton, Cobb, Coweta, DeKalb, Fayette County, Douglas, Fulton, Floyd, Gwinnett, Henry, Newton, Paulding, Rockdale, Troup, and Walton. Now, if you do not see your county listed up on the screen, just give my office a call to see if it's one of the newer counties that I've added and perhaps can assist you in your adoption. So not only does my law practice handle foster care adoptions, but I also will handle relative adoptions, private party adoptions, step parent adoptions, interstate, that's adoptions between Georgia and another state, agency adoptions, and adult adoptions. My website is campbelllawpractice.com. You may want to go there. I have on one of my pages a resource of just a lot of adoption articles that answer frequently asked questions and provide a lot of information for adoptive parents. So visit my website just to see if you have any questions, and maybe there's an article there as well. And to learn more about me and the adoption process, please visit my website. Now let's dive in to the bulk of this webinar, and let's start with who can file to adopt here in the state of Georgia. Again, this is for the state of Georgia. If you are located out of the state of Georgia, you will need to speak with that state, an attorney in that state, to make sure you understand the laws in the state that you live in if you are not in Georgia. Again, this is for a Georgia adoption. So, who can file to adopt in Georgia? You need to be at least 21 years of age or married and living with your spouse. You should be at least 10 years older than the child that you seek to adopt. And you should be a bona fide resident of the state of Georgia at the time of filing the petition for adoption. And you need to make sure that you're financially, physically, and mentally able to have permanent custody of the child to adopt. If you meet these criteria, then you will be able to file a petition to adopt here in Georgia. Now, where do you file your petition for adoption? So, all petitions for adoption should be filed in the Superior Court in which the adoptive parent, the petitioner, resides in general. So you see, for adoptions, we've moved from the Superior Court. Most of your interaction, if not all, has been in the juvenile court up until the time of the adoption process. And at that time, we're going to move to the Superior Court. So in general, we're going to file in the county where the petitioner, also the adoptive parent, resides. Now, if there's good cause shown, we can file in the court of the county where the child lives. A lot of the time, the child is living with you, so that's, again, your county. The location of the child placing agency that has legal custody of the child, so that pertains a lot of times to a private agency adoption. We can file where that agency is. Where the child was born, if the petition is filed within 1 year of the child's birth. Or we can file, which is very, I highlighted this for foster care adoptions, in the Office of Department having legal custody of the child in that county. So in other words, if your DFAX is Fulton County and you live in DeKalb County, we could file in DeKalb County because that's the county where you reside, or we could file in Fulton County because that's the county that has legal custody of the child. So moving more along a little bit quicker on the adoption legal process, let's talk about the adoption petition. So, what actually goes in the foster care adoption petition? Well, I will say there is a lot of legal information that goes into the adoption petition. And this adoption petition is drafted and it's signed by your attorney. But I always like to review the contents of the adoption petition with my clients before I file, because I want to make sure that everything is true and correct in there, including the names, the dates, the address, information like that, stuff that only you know is correct within the adoption petition. So here's my process of what my office will do. So I will send an online intake form for you to complete. And you're going to put your information in there. If you're married, your spouse's information, information that you know about the child. If you desire to change the child's name, you can tell me that on the intake form and list the child's name that you would like for him or her to bear following the adoption. And I'm going to use all of this information to draft the adoption petition. Then I'm going to schedule a meeting with you all, and we're going to go over the adoption petition together to make sure everything is correct. And you'll see on the list of under potential adoptive parent, the first item is a verification of each petitioner. So the verification is a form that the adoptive parent signs, because again, the attorney signs the petition and the adoptive parent signs a verification stating that everything in the adoption petition is true and correct. And this is filed with the adoption petition. So that's one of the documents that I will need from the potential adoptive parent to sign. Now, if you're married, I will need a marriage license. If you're divorced, I need a divorce decree. If you are a widow, I need a death certificate for your spouse. Also, if the child is over 14 years old, they will need to consent to the adoption. So I will prepare a child's consent for your child to sign and execute. And then I will register you if necessary to take additional fingerprints for your background checks. I know you all are like, we have done so many background checks, and that's good and that's great. But some counties are going to want another background check and for it to go directly to the judge. So so if you have any information that may come up on your background check, you want to disclose this to your attorney at the beginning of the process, so that I like to put this information in the adoption petition to let the judge know that we're not hiding anything, but we have an opportunity to explain anything that may come up on your background check. So you want to make sure again that you provide this information upfront to your attorney. Let me go back and just mention about the child's consent. Again, I stated if you're over 14 years or age, your child will need to provide a written consent. But also if your child is going to turn 14 within a couple of months, I go ahead and just get the child's consent too, just in case. We don't know if the adoption process could take a little longer than we hope. And then we don't want to have to go back and re-get the child's consent and file it and supplement the file of the child's consent when we can just get it if we know there's a chance the child may turn 14 before it's finalized. So we'll just go ahead and get that if they're within a couple of months. Okay. So on the left side, potential adoptive parent, again, those are the list of the documents that I'm going to need from you. On the right side are a list of the documents that I will need from your adoption caseworker. So what I will do once you have signed an agreement stating that, yes, I want you to be my attorney and we are in a legally binding attorney-client relationship, I'm going to send over a letter of request to your adoption caseworker. And these are the documents on the right side that I'm going to request from them. Excuse me. And these are standard documents. And so none of these documents are going to catch them by surprise, but it just gives them, a checklist of things they need to send over to me. So birth certificates of the child, if the parent surrendered in the juvenile court, copies or certified copies of the surrender of rights, a certified TPR order, so that's going to have to be an original document. Affidavit of compliance from DFACS. DFACS is consent. If a biological parent is deceased, a death certificate. A background information form with regards to each child. If there is an ICP, if it's an ICPC adoption, meaning the child is crossing over state lines, then we need to have compliance, a form that shows that ICPC has been complied with. Again, the putative father registry results that we talked about earlier, and a home study report. So these are the documents that I will request from the caseworker. You don't have to provide that information from me. For me, I'm sorry, the caseworker will provide it. Also, let me just go back and say one thing. In our adoption petition, if you desire to change your child's name, we will do that in the adoption petition, and we will request the court to change the name following the adoption to the name that you provide. Okay, a motion to expedite. So this will help answer the question of how long will it take for my foster care adoption to be complete. So I like to file with my adoption petition on all of my foster care adoptions a motion to expedite my final adoption hearing. And I request in my motion the judge to hear my petition within 15 days from receipt of the petition. Usually, if I file a complete adoption petition, which contains all the information that I listed on the prior slide, and the judge's calendar isn't full, then the judge usually I have great success with getting this motion granted. So I'm able to get a final hearing in about 3 weeks or less for my clients. Now, I'm not saying that I always am able to, but I do put forth this effort and make this motion and fight to try to get a very quick adoption hearing for my foster care clients. And again, I've had pretty good success with getting adoption finalized. I will say there are some counties that move much faster than the others. And once we start working together, I'll be able to provide specific information about the county that you file in, what some of the judges are like, some of the details specific to that county with regards to final hearings as well. Now, your final adoption hearing. Since the parental rights have been terminated in the juvenile court, once we have that petition filed with the Superior Court and all the rights have been terminated in the juvenile court, we have an uncontested adoption, and that's going to allow, again, for us to have a quicker hearing. Now, our adoption hearings, uncontested adoption hearings, are pretty quick. They're usually in the judge's chambers. Post COVID, a lot of adoptions have been happening virtually and online, which I am very grateful for. That if I've been able to request these hearings online, so not to slow down my clients' final hearings due to the court just being closed or hearing limited cases because of COVID. But these adoptions, if they are in the court, they are closed and they're not held in the open court with other cases. This is just to protect the privacy of the child. So it's just us. Sometimes it's in the judge's chambers. And if it's online, then it will just be us on the adoption hearing via Zoom or WebEx or electronically. The adoptive parents are sworn in, and I just walk them through some simple questions to provide their testimony. And remember, if your child that you're adopting is over 14 years, the judge is going to want to hear them verbally say consent to the adoption. So I'll have a few very easy questions for them so that they can let the judge know that they are consenting to this adoption. Now, usually final hearings, uncontested, really and truthfully, will last under 10 minutes. But the judges love to hear adoptions. It's part of the favorite part of their day because most of the day they're hearing and or ruling on cases that are not too happy, difficult, and or stressful. So whenever they are able to hear an adoption and grant an adoption, it brightens their day. So very often the judges are chit-chatting with the clients and trying to make the adoption process, final hearing, just a pleasant experience. At the conclusion of the final hearing, the final order will be taken to the clerk's office for filing. You're able to obtain as many certified final orders as you want free of charge on this day. So we make sure that we get plenty. I usually order about 6. That way, 6 per child. That way you will keep 4 certified final orders of adoption. I keep one just in case you ever lose one, and then one is sent to your foster care caseworker for their records. Now, because adoptions deal with minor children, the file is going to be closed right after the final hearing. And that means you are not going to be able, should you lose your final orders, to just walk into the court and say, "Hi, I'm mom, I'm dad. I've lost my final orders and I need to get more copies." It just isn't permissible. Me as your attorney, it's not permissible for me either. So I always stress the importance of you keeping your final orders in a secure place and not just passing them out to anyone. I say, make copies of your final orders. If you need to show someone proof of the adoption, take your certified and show them the stamped, filed, sealed final order. But should they want to keep it, then let them keep a copy of the final order. The new birth certificate. Now, once the adoption is finalized, a certificate of adoption form, I think it's 3927, is sent to Georgia Vital Records if your child was born in Georgia to obtain a new birth certificate. If your child was born out of the state of Georgia, then you're going to have to contact the vital records in the state that the child was born in, follow their procedures to obtain a new birth certificate. In Georgia, the cost of birth certificates is $35 for the first birth certificate, and thereafter $5 for each additional birth certificate. On the birth certificate, the child's new name following the adoption will be listed, and the adoptive parents will become the new legal parents, and their names will be listed on the new birth certificates as well. Now, if you're obtaining a new birth certificate for your child, you may want to just keep the original birth certificate, because as soon as the adoption is completed and a new form is submitted changing the child's name and or changing their legal parents, you will not be able to obtain that original birth certificate. So you want to get it, if you want a keepsake of the child's original birth certificate, you want to get that before the adoption is finalized. You do have the option of not obtaining a new birth certificate following the adoption as well. That is your choice as well as the adoptive parents. But I will say it's very helpful having a birth certificate with the new you as the new legal parents listed. And it in the long run will keep you from always having to pull out your final orders to show that you're the new adoptive and legal parents in different circumstances. New birth certificates can take 4 to 6 to 8 weeks in vital records as well here in Georgia, and maybe a little longer or maybe shorter in different states. But again, you'll have to follow the state, if it's not in Georgia, of where your child was born, their process to obtain the new birth certificate. Let's talk about obtaining a new Social Security number. Now, once the new birth certificate has arrived and you have the certified final orders here in Georgia, you are now ready to go to Social Security to obtain a new Social Security number for the child if you desire to. This is recommended if different people have had access to your child's Social Security number, then you want to give that child a fresh start with a new Social Security number. So what you will do is take the certified final order of adoption and the new birth certificate to Social Security to request a new Social Security number. I will say Social Security may be the only agency that requests to keep the certified final order. And so they may not accept the copy, but I do tell people to ask Social Security if they will return the certified order once they are done with processing the new Social Security number. And I've heard that sometimes they will return your certified final order to you. So that in very quickly is the foster care adoption process. I hope that you found the information helpful. Next steps. So you may be asking, what are the next steps? So if TPR has occurred for your child in the juvenile court and you're ready to move forward with the adoption process, and if you're looking for an experienced adoption attorney, if you answered yes to these questions, then I hope that you will give me a call at the number listed below to schedule time to speak with me for your free intake call for us to go over the adoption process and get you started on your foster care journey. If you have questions, I know that this was a lot of information. I'm happy to speak with you about it again. Again, take down my contact information. My email address is listed on the screen as well as my number. And I hope that you won't hesitate to give me a call to let me assist you and your family with the foster care adoption process. Again, I'm very passionate about helping families. It's an honor, it's a true blessing for me to be a part of your adoption journey process. It's not something that I take lightly. So I hope that you will give me the opportunity to assist your family on this journey. Thank you so much and take care.